Hi there. My name is Meredith White, and I am an instructional coach and instructional technology coach in Gwinnett County Public Schools in Gwinnett County, Georgia. If you're not familiar with Georgia, that is Metro Atlanta, so northeast of Atlanta towards South Carolina. We are a humongous place with a humongous district. We are the biggest district in the state and the 12th biggest district in the country. So we've got about 151 schools, 180,000 students, 20,000 employees, and 1 million residents. So we've got a lot of people doing a lot of things. In the context of world languages, that means we have a lot of fantastic teachers. We've got wonderful supervisors and support staff, and really anything one could want in terms of world languages. But it also means that classes are large, departments are large, and there's just a lot of people doing a lot of things, a lot of cooks in the kitchen, as we say in English. So I say that to say, as we're talking right now, today, right now, about high leverage templates for planning, communicating, saving time, um, streamlining things so that you can use the same document, but just change the content across units. When I think about that, that's my context. I just recently transitioned to this role. So this will be new for me in the 2023-2024 school year, literally just now, just switched over. And so not being in the classroom and now kind of reflecting, I can see it is more important than ever, of course, to save time and save resources and really try to make it as sustainable as possible. So when I say anything but routine, I think of it in terms of the way we see routine sometimes. I think of routine. I immediately after sort of think boring, right? These are words that we associate with some of those things: routine, boring, regulated, like things that we don't always want our teaching to sound like. When I talk about my classroom, I always wanted it to be fresh and new and exciting and innovative. But the honest truth is, with big classes or not, or with big departments or not, being a department of one is also exhausting, right? Many times. So, any of those contexts, which are all very unique to where we are and our setting, all of those come with a lot of work and a lot of different things to factor in. So, when I think about saving time, streamlining resources, and being as efficient as possible, that's what I'm talking about. I'm coming to it from a context of just a ton of people all the time doing all the things. So if that's not your setting, you're going to have to kind of adjust some of my examples, but the content is still applicable. What I hope to share with you today are three things. So our goals and kind of our layout, kind of our agenda, like teachers, right? Our teachers have an agenda, is first of all, you're going to get the go-to recyclable resources that made and have made for a long time my life a lot more sustainable and easier as a teacher. You're going to get those specific files and you'll get access to that right away. You can actually peruse as this is playing. The second thing you're going to get is I'm going to put it in context, again, a lot of times in large context, like big district, big classrooms, etc., in terms of the timeline/unit planning to incorporate those recyclable resources in number one there, the go-to recyclable resources, those files, those documents, right? Like paper, things that you can print and hold in your hands and give out to students. And then the third piece there is slides that go with those recyclable resources, but also that are their own standalone activities. So you've got not only the thing that students are working on and that you can make copies of and adjust, but you've also got what they're looking at, what's being displayed in terms of like on your projector, the slides, right? And then you've also got the context of how does that work into other things? Like, okay, so I got this cool activity. Where does that fit in? Where does this game go? How can I capitalize on these resources and some of the things I'm already doing? So I hope that some of these activities are new for you. If they're not new, I hope it maybe repeats something that you're already thinking about, but it just maybe rephrases it or reframes it or just repeats it. And then hopefully like I said, the documents prove handy to you and you're going to have editable copies that you can take and make your own and do whatever you need to do. Because I love when people share resources, but I love when they share editable resources even more. So you can take these and they're all editable and credited for the people who inspired them or collaborated on them, and everything is there for you. Feel free to share with colleagues, friends, even other content areas. I personally think our content area of world languages is the best. I think we are the most interesting, the smartest, the most fun, but I guess other content areas have to exist, right? So feel free to share those with those colleagues as well, because they are not world language specific and they are neither level nor language specific. So you feel free to use them however you can use them. When we think about the context of our teaching and we look at how it is that we want to do all the things we want to do, we look at, and I'm going to laser over here so you can see a little bit more clearly, we look at what ACTFL calls the core practices. So the 6 core practices, right now there are 6. These are facilitating the target language comprehensively. So being comprehensible and compelling, right? Allowing yourself to stay in the target language, ideally 90% of the time, but if you do it 70 or 80 or 60, that's okay too, right? Staying in the target language as much as possible, as much as is sustainable for what you have and for what you can do for your setting. And working to be comprehensible as often as possible and as scaffolded as possible for your students while still pushing them. It's using authentic resources. It's designing oral communication tasks that make sense, that are authentic, that are things they would probably have to do or will have to do or just do have to do in their communities or in different settings using the world languages. Planning with backward design, which is just good teaching, right? That's just good pedagogy. Planning with a goal in mind. I always think of it like the grocery store. If I just show up at the grocery store and I have no meals in mind and no plan, no grocery list, nothing, complete disaster. Come home with like stuff we don't even eat, gum, like ice cube trays, a pair of sandals, and like 7 bananas. That's it. Like there's nothing makes sense, right? So we do so much backward design in life. We make these goals, we pack for trips, we plan grocery lists, all of these different things. Same thing with teaching. And then grammar as a concept. These last 2, I think, are the hardest right here. Grammar as a concept in context is really hard because that's not how I was personally taught to teach, but it's become who I am as a teacher, how I teach. Making sure that the grammar makes sense in context and is presented in context, not presented first, then for them to be able to use. That one's a hard one. And personally, for me, the hardest one is the last one, providing oral appropriate feedback. That's just hard in huge classes. I'm telling you, I'm used to classes of 34, 35, 36, 37 students. And it's so hard to give them the feedback that they need as often as they need it, but we know how important it is. So these are the 6 core practices from ACTFL, our national organization for world language teaching. And when we look at the core practices, that's the kind of teaching that frames the standards, the can-do statements, these other big documents that come from ACTFL. So think of your state organization. For example, New Jersey has FLENG, New York has NYSEFLT, Georgia has FLAG, Tennessee has TWLTA. You've got different state organizations. They all talk to a region. So there are 5 regions. And then those 5 regions then talk to ACTFL. So when you go national, regional, state level, lots of support in there for professional development, for mentoring, for conferences, all of the things. We all come back to the same world language learning principles, which is the core practices, the standards, the can-do statements, and such. But that's a lot to think about, and it's a lot to manage. So when we look at those all together, how does that fit in? We've got our organization, like, are we organized in our classroom, our resources, our literal physical classroom? What are our daily logistics? How do we go about our day? How much time do we have in a class period? How many kids in a class period? What are the requirements? Am I posting lesson plans? Do I need to take attendance in the first 5 minutes, or can I wait till the end of the day? Who's dropping in? How many observations, casual or formal, am I getting? What are my technology requirements? What's my technology availability? These are all very personal things to our settings, and all of us have like a teaching fingerprint. No one's setting is exactly the same because even next door to each other, we're not exactly the same. This person might have, totally different personal burdens than I have, or vice versa, or just a different home schedule or different responsibilities. All of our situations are totally unique. And then the last piece is that all of those come together to ultimately be advocacy for our programs, whether we like it or realize it or not. A lot of other content areas don't need to advocate the way we do, but in our awesomeness, we also have to advocate for ourselves more than others. So parents and families and guardians want to see their students using the language. So they say things like, well, what kind of Spanish are they learning? What kind of French are they using? What will they be able to do? He's taken 4 semesters. He doesn't use any of it at home. We went to Cancun. We never used it, and so on. We can hear these very frustrating things, which have some problematic aspects on several levels. But ultimately, we have to advocate more than a lot of other content areas. So chemistry and algebra and language arts, they might not be going anywhere. But our programs, we've seen and we've known people who have lost world language programs, not due to lack of effort, but just the lack of awareness a lot of times. And then when we look at our resources, are they representative? Are they telling different sort of stories from different places? And also, who's telling those stories? Whose stories are we ignoring? What do our resources look like? And do our students see themselves in our resources and in our teaching? Are we being intentional about those things? All of that means that we are teaching for world language proficiency, both linguistic and cultural. So when we look at kind of the stage, I would say the stage is now set because every day we've got kind of this mini little TV show, right? Where we set the stage and we do the things. And ultimately, at the end of it, we hope our students come out with more language ability than they, maybe realize they have. They have that confidence. They have the ability to do things and communicate things and talk to people in ways and understand things that they wouldn't have understood before, or aspects of themselves, right? All of that goes into a language. In the words of one of my favorite educators, Stacy Margarita Johnson out of Tennessee, world languages are supposed to make us love the world better, right? We talk about all these goals. Like, I want my students to do this with a language and do this with a language. And she says they're supposed to make us love the world better. Like, we should just be able to be better people for ourselves and for others with world languages. So that's our goal, and use it, right? We want students to feel empowered to now be able to interact in the world and with themselves in different ways. So we need stuff to do that, and we need materials, and we need ways to use those materials in multiple kinds of ways, not just one and done. It's really fun when you find just the perfect resource on Teachers Pay Teachers, or from, your publisher or whatever. That's great. We love those single resources. But if they're all single resources, then our students never get acclimated to trying something multiple times, or playing a game, or looking forward to something multiple times. And we as a teacher also feel the pressure to make everything new and exciting and just always fun and whatever, because we think that's what we're supposed to do. And so what I've got here, and you can see you've got access down here, this nifty little link where it says http bit.ly/Meredith templates. So big M, big T, they are case sensitive. bit.ly/Meredith templates gives you access to exactly what you're seeing. So you have all of these slides within this table of contents. So like I said, totally editable. If you're not familiar with Google Slides, I'm going to escape here so you can see. So you have this slideshow. And once you go to this address, what you're going to do is go File, and then make a copy, and copy the entire presentation. Or if you just want some of them, click Selected Slides, and then you can click and choose them. And it's really, really handy. If you ever get editing rights to something that you, or excuse me, if you get shared something that you think, oh, I should ask for edit access, I need to request access, you probably don't. If you can see it and you're able to see, like the slideshow, for example, you just can't edit them. It just means somebody made you a viewer, and you can always click File, make a copy, and then you can do whatever you want with it and it's all yours. You're not editing the original or deleting somebody else's work or whatever. Really nice. So Google's great in that way. So what you have here is this table of contents. And what I've done is labeled, the numbers shift sometimes, but I try to keep them accurate as best I can, of what you have on each one. So for example, we're going to see the first thing is in-class activities, games, activities, and or content. We'll go through them and explain a couple of them, the major ones. So I'll explain most of them until we get to games, activities, and unit routines. Then what you're going to see is kind of an overview as well as some documents. And I will put it in context of, like I said, my own unit planning and kind of what this looks like in kind of a major way. So I'm really, really excited. And I hope these also are as useful to you as they have been to me, because I'm so thankful for so many people who have collaborated on these with me. So the first one is just your standard anticipatory set or warm-up slide. I have always had a warm-up, always had an anticipatory set, always had something. Mine for a long time were super boring. And then I couldn't figure out why students weren't doing them, why they were copying off each other, I mean, you name it, right? And they were doing it. And they were very boring. What I realized was a couple of things. One, I had no way to check them. Two, they weren't very creative. They all had a right or wrong answer. So if I said conjugate the verb to be, and that was like warm-up question number one, that's kind of a heavy cognitive load. It doesn't seem like it, but it can be for our students because we go, oh yeah, conjugate, no problem. That's easy, I can do that. And then we go, okay, the verb to be, and then we can use it in a creative context, create a sentence with youth form. We put it in multiple tenses. We can do all that like nothing. They cannot, right? They are learners of the language. And again, 6 core practices, it's not grammar in context. It's important to be super understood and as clear as possible, but it's not in context. So instead, maybe I'll say, how are you? Like, what are you like? And in that, my question used a form of to be and asked each student a question that is unique to them. So one might say I'm tall, one might say I'm smart, one might say I'm funny. All of their answers have the opportunity to be different. And I used them in context, which means they have to respond in context instead of just conjugating the form. We can do that later in practice. That's no problem. We've made grammar like a naughty word. It's not a naughty word. It's, important to get it's important maintenance. I always think of it like a car. And I would tell my students, like, you have to get your oil changed, you have to get your tires rotated, you have to know a few things about the car, but pretty much you just drive the car. So as long as you know what things mean and how to use them, you got to keep maintaining it, or else you're going to be on the side of the highway. So depending on how far you want your car language to get you, that's how you maintain it. If you ignore your oil change, ignore your tires, ignore your brakes, eventually it's not going to get you very far and it's going to stop. But if you keep those things up, then maybe you upgrade some of them. Maybe you update them and you get it cleaned out and detailed. And now it's a little bit, sexier than it was. That's language, right? Throw in an exclamation, throw in some kind of idiom, throw in some slang, and that's kind of fun, right? Maintenance. I think of grammar as maintenance, just like your car. So if we ignore it completely, not good. If we only focus on the maintenance and not the driving or the fun and the thrill of driving and how the utility of driving, how useful it is, then also not good. There's got to be somewhere in the middle, right? So when I changed my warm-up options after seeing Bethany Drew and Laura Sexton just do this beautifully, I realized they were giving warm-up options. So they were saying, here's 10, do 5 of them. Here's 8, do 6 of them. So for me, I started giving my students 6 options and they answered 4 out of the 6, which means they can ignore 2 of them if they have no idea what they're asking. Great, ignore those, no problem, whatever, doesn't matter. And I would usually make on these, I would make like 1 and 2 a little bit easier, 3 and 4 medium, and then 5 and 6 a little bit more advanced or creative. I wouldn't tell them that, but I was just kind of keep that in mind. And it's interesting to see how students skip around. Now on their paper, they're putting what number they chose and then they're answering. So that's something also I can keep up with for accountability. And I don't mean accountability like a gotcha, but accountability in the most genuine way of realizing that in COVID and post COVID, a lot of us are seeing the same things, which is it can be really hard to engage students without some kind of sense of accountability. And whatever that means for your setting, if that means like they won't do it without a grade, I totally hear you. If that means like you have to email every day after they don't do X and Y because someone at home will motivate them because the students are apathetic, I totally hear you. Like all of that and everywhere in between, totally normal, totally understandable, and we have all been in the same boat with you. If you're not seeing any of that, amazing. That's wonderful. That's great. There's no shame, no shade in any of it. But accountability has become sort of like a bad word. And I don't mean it in that sense. I just mean it in checking in with a student on Wednesday and saying, hey, Meredith, you haven't done warm-ups this week at all. It's Wednesday. So you've missed 2 of them, which means answering 4 out of 6. You've missed 8 questions minimum, in addition to maybe whatever activities they haven't done in class. It's a conversation starter for sure, and figuring out how we can get to the bottom of what's going on with students. So this totally revolutionized how I was starting class because as they're doing their warm up, they've got the instructions here at the bottom, which you can see. This was a COVID renovation. I added these, what I was doing and what they're doing. And usually what the teacher piece says is taking attendance, greeting students, starting class, all of the above, which I think is really, really important. So I can walk around with my laptop or my tablet or whatever, or just my clipboard, take attendance, chat with kids. How was volleyball? How's your mom? Okay, she emailed me, I'll email her back. Blah, 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 blah. Conversational, and then go from there. So we can start class and I know exactly what's going on. So easy little things like that I would use on a daily basis. Something else that I would use on a near daily basis are these 2 word walls. So you have a couple of options here. This first one just has all of them in yellow at the top, and this is great for pointing and pausing. So if we're telling a story and saying, je suis, and then you point, it says, je suis, I am, or el chico dice, and you're pointing to El Chico and dice, and it says the boy says. So it's your word wall. Again, if you're in a big place with a lot of resources, it's a beautiful thing. And you can make manipulative walls, and you can do word walls and laminated with magnets and all that kind of thing. That's fantastic. If you don't have the time for that and you want to do it electronically, this can be a great word wall alternative. Especially if you've got a really big projector screen or something big to display so students can see, of course, as you're pointing and pausing. If you're in big classes and even feel a little bit shaky about certain classes and the management piece and the attention piece, how you feel that tension building and you're like, oh no, this student's talking and now this student's talking, and you're like, oh, I'm going to lose them. And if I turn to the board to go write something, it's going to be game over. That's a totally relatable thing that I don't think we talk about enough in teaching, is that management piece of just engagement, literally getting them to be with you and follow with you. And with COVID and after COVID now, a lot of our students don't have the stamina that we once saw them with. Plus you've got a battle of the cell phones. So I don't mean any of this to sound negative. I just mean for it to be realistic. There's a lot going on in one classroom. And if all you're trying to do is present a text, tell a story, preface an article before you read it, whatever, it can be really hard to get the attention of 20 to 25 to 30 to 35 students, right? Or more. So an electronic word wall can be great because you get a real good clicker, which I highly recommend. Now you're not leashed to the board and you don't have to just be doing all the things with your hands and then turning around. You can just be pointing and pausing right here at the word wall, right? You can say, el chico dice, es chico o chica? And you can do lots of that really good comprehensible input questioning and all of that good stuff without losing focus on the students and without them losing focus on you. So you can check for comprehension and engagement and attention constantly, right? Not in a, gotcha kind of way of eye contact all the time, but you can check in with your students. So if they're doodling, are they still listening? If they're watching you, if they're talking, are they asking about what's going on? you're present, so you can figure out and kind of get a finger on the pulse of what's going on in your classroom, right? Hard to do when you're turned around trying to like slide the words around and put them in the sentence blank. And I say that from experience, as someone who tried to do like too many things and realized it was kind of distracting, right? Sometimes it's nice to just have everything right there. The second option has some color coded options. So like if you wanted to, for example, these gray ones, if you wanted to do these as like people, you could do that. If you wanted to do blue as exclamations, and then maybe the red is like a key character, great, then they're color coded that way. If you have students with different kind of color accommodations, you can just change the texture on the outside of the text box. Just click those text boxes, and then at the top, here, I'll show you. Click that text box, and at the top, just change either the border like texture here, or the border width, like the weight, any of that, like the color, you can do any of that, which is really nice. So you've got the dash, the weight, and then the color. You can just change that instead of just the color, and then students can see all that too. So you, instead of saying like in the gray we have blank, in the blue we have blank, you would just say like the dotted line are like places and things, nouns, whatever you want to say. The thicker dashed lines are people, and then maybe this one's just like solid instead of red. The solid line is an exclamation, you know, oh, no way. Oh, don't tell me. Oh, you're kidding. Like different things, different idioms that we teach our students, right? So that can be really, really fun. So that's one way you can do that. And again, it's just pointing and pausing. Get a good clicker. I'm telling you, made a huge difference in those huge classes to be in the aisles amongst the young people, and being able to be like boop, 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 and kind of control things. It's for me, it was very freeing and a lot more like liberating instead of hold on, let me run back to the computer. That's exhausting. So you've got some slides that I would use very often to introduce new content and context. And then you've just got the old fashioned kind of content, but again, with the addition of like what I'm doing and then what students are doing, which again, a COVID edition became super important, especially if you have to post things. So you have to post like a calendar, or it could be like, what are our learning, like over here, you've got student goal setting. These are district parameters here on the far right. Feel free to delete this wheel. It's just a district thing that I have to have posted. Just took it a step further and said, okay, sure, I'll post it every day on my slides that I'm already using. Done. As well as upcoming due dates. Again, the student and teacher instructions could be an objective right here. So instead of the upcoming due dates, this right here could read like today's target, and you just paste the slide, right? You just keep going. One little hack that I love about Google Slides is you can, of course, on the left side here on this film strip, you can always just copy and then paste, or you can just click duplicate slide, delightful. So you'll see when I click duplicate slide, it'll go boop right below it. That's great. I'm just gonna hit the delete button. But you can also Command or Control D, and that'll duplicate it. So if you have, excuse me, an entire day's slides and you're like, you know what, I want to copy paste, like I need 7 of these, and then I'm just going to change the instructions. You can just duplicate, 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 and you just keep going till your heart's content. That's one of my favorite functions of Google Slides, is that duplicate. All the shortcuts are great. So never be afraid to right click on something, because you're going to find some kind of hidden treasure in there that is delightful and that maybe you didn't realize. Just like these 3 little dots, right? I can do full screen, then I can turn on these captions, I can turn on my laser, I can do whatever I want in Google Slides that it offers. So don't be afraid to always click around, right? That's what it's there for. So you can have some content there, a story, whatever, and students at the very least on this slide know what they're doing all the time. Even if it's just getting ready for Bookit or Gimkit or Quizlet Live or Quiz or any of those, I once in a while will forget that I even like was thought like, oh yeah, we'll play Quizlet. It's just like, you know how you're looking at your plans and you're like, what did I think we were gonna do? Especially if you did them the week before. So it was like, oh, let me really get ahead of things. This is gonna be great. I'm gonna be super ahead. super on top of it. You get everything done by Friday. You're like, oh my gosh, I've done it. The holy grail. I'm ready for Monday. But then Monday comes and you're like, what did I plan? What did I say we were going to do? I love this kind of game slide just so I remember, oh yeah, I was going to do a Gimkit or a Quizlet Live or a Bookit. It kind of reminds me. I haven't had to write out lesson plans for my administrator in a very long time, but this basically is that, right? We're going to play Gimkit. I just fill in the bracket for 20 minutes or whatever. So that's really handy. You've got a couple of Zoom things for breakout rooms. This one's inspired by Esther Park, who was an amazing language arts teacher. She is fantastic. And in the speaker notes, I have linked to her Twitter because she's amazing. On Twitter, she is Mrs. Park Shine. She is wonderful, and she is now an instructional coach, and I believe a technology coach as well. So same position as mine is. And she had the idea of having different Zoom rooms when teaching virtually for students' goals or what they desired. So one might be to like work with a teacher and be collaborative in that way. One might just be some quiet workspace where like no one can unmute, no one can, I just want somebody to be there, but I want to stay on the call in case I need help. I want to feel like I'm present. And then one might be just classmates working on the thing together, like you would do in your classroom. So if you teach virtually or have a virtual component or a digital day and a requirement where you need to like be online or be synchronous, this can be really nice to kind of provide students the opportunity. So you're not just like awkwardly all on the same Zoom doing, you know, that kind of thing. But it can also be handy within the classroom. It's just, you know, depends on what you want to do. It's like different rooms, right? Like a game show. So that one might not be as super useful. And same thing goes with the next one. This just happened to be like a what's happening? There's like catchy music there, which we can't hear. I think I turned off the music. Hold on. Let's see if I can. Uh-oh. See what happens. Okay. Well, I don't think you can hear that. So I'm just going to hold pause because I didn't turn on share sound for this. But if you could, what you would hear is just like elevator music. I literally just YouTubed elevator music, and it's like dun 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 dun. Dun. So in Google Slides, when you click insert and video, you can insert YouTube videos. So maybe that means this is elevator music, which I just YouTube searched, or maybe it's a timer. So 15-minute timers. There's tons of them on YouTube. 15, any increment you could want, 6 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. Really, really handy. So this might be a great waiting room thing for, again, virtually, or just as class gets started and they have, you know, something to do now that maybe isn't those warm-up questions. Again, it's like whatever you need it for, at least this way, all you would do is like I did, insert a picture of your classroom, change up the instructions in the screenshot, ready, go. It's already made for you, or at least may inspire an idea. So hopefully. I've also got a locker here that has, and I'm gonna pause me, there's me, we don't need more of me. This is the same slide, whoops, my mouse got a little happy there, little hair trigger. You'll see this is the same slide as the previous one. And there we go, we're gonna, let's see, calm it on down, mouse. It really, did you see that shaking back and forth? What you have is the same as the previous one, but this is going to function like as my hi getting to know you slide. So if I have to post something that's like, hi parents, hi families, hi students, welcome to Spanish 1, welcome to Spanish 2, French 3, Arabic 4, whatever. Maybe you have to do a getting to know you instead of like open house like we used to do. We have to do a combination. So it means we have to do both. So there's a getting to know you video and a meet and greet and whatever. So I just keep recycling a lot of the same ones. And in this one, I just made a video and then put it on the slide. Again, Google Slides, insert video. And that means you've either put it on YouTube or you've put it in your Google Drive and you just find it there. And what I did was I just uploaded it so that students could see that. And then it was me saying, hi, welcome to the class, etc. A little bit easier, a little bit more engaging. And again, they get a little bit of me, they get a piece of, they can see our classroom and so on. So I've made sort of that virtual locker, those Bitmoji classrooms that we all spent a lot of time on in 2020. I keep using all those because I think that's important. It took me a long time, right? I think that's important. If you need to post like a weekly agenda, here's a template. So I just put little furniture in there. Again, Bitmoji Classroom. I just couldn't stop. Stuck my little Bitmoji in there, drinking coffee. And then maybe it's an upcoming due date. Maybe it's an objective. Maybe it's some reminders. But this lives on our LMS homepage all the time. So again, what's really nice about this is you can't say as a student or as a parent that you didn't know what was going on, especially if I went to the time and the hassle to post all of this in all these different places. The other hack is, remember, in Google Slides, when you click File, look at all those amazing options. One of them is download, and one of those download options is save as a PDF. So if you've got absent students, chronically ill students, anyone who needs any kind of scaffolding or accommodations or extra time, repetition, that's like so many of our students. Who doesn't need a little extra time sometimes, or a lot of times? Repetition, reminders, right? Totally, totally normal, totally acceptable. File, download PDF. We'll take that whole slideshow, and now you've got it in document form. So if you had this, you could send them all the reminders, all of the activities, all of the whatever your student-facing program is, if it's PowerPoint, if it's slides, if it's your documents, whatever it is, if it's either like PowerPoint or slides that you're presenting in class, either clicking from your computer, navigating somehow, you're presenting material, both of those, file, download / export, save as a PDF, poof, done. Now you've got a document you can send to those students, parents, families. Everything you did in class was right there, including these reminders, which is really great. So any of these that says, hey, don't forget, our Unit 1 test is coming up. You're going to have to do all the things. Oh, I need a comma right here. I'm just seeing a typo. Reading, writing, speaking, listening. It's happening, right? Oh, don't forget, Friday is that test. Take your folder home, etc. Okay. And then anything unique here, like anything purple was like, our Unit 1 activities. So if that is helpful, then there you go. It's already made for you. Just change it out. Just change it out for you. I've also got a couple of these slides that say like, hey, now what? Maybe you finished up the last activity, virtually or not, even in class. You go, okay, we've got 10 minutes left. We're now working on blank. Click your last slide for the lesson, which is also your mental bookmark for the lesson. Like, all right, this is the end of today. Okay, done. You now are finishing, blah, 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 your exit card, page 6, whatever they're doing. Check your Gmail real quick and check your grades, because if we're constantly checking these things, then I know what I said in the syllabus about no late work and always being on top of your stuff, I can hold them and myself accountable for. If I'm constantly reminding them, hey, don't forget, check your email, check your grades, check your email. Now at the end of the unit, no, you can't turn that in still, because remember, check your grades. So if you saw it was missing, why didn't you say anything? And that again sparks a conversation, not to be unreasonable and not let students turn things in late and just be a real stickler. I'm not saying that, but in terms of giving a realistic amount and an amount that feels good in your gut, just as a teacher and as a person, of grace and space, for me, that has become really critical, is really reconciling how much time is too much time, how much time is not enough time, what's realistic in terms of reminders that we get as adults, let's say, compared to what we give children, right? They're literal children still growing. So I just am a big believer in lots of reminders and lots of help and all of that, to the point where then if they don't do something, I can say, listen, so now we know for next time, let's make sure we don't ignore these opportunities and this chance and this chance. And there you go, right? We can keep them accountable, but gently, obviously. I don't mean that in a mean way. And it's the same thing for the what do you need screen. It's the same, along the same lines. Like, hey, what do you need? So right now, maybe I'm focusing on grading something. Students are workshopping something and they're working on blah, blah, blah. And then also maybe I'm answering emails. So maybe this is like a digital day where we have to be synchronous, or if I'm a virtual teacher, that kind of time, right? We don't have a lesson per se, but we need to be online and I'm here if you need anything. The next slides are inspired by a lot of people, but Greta Lundgaard. So Elsie Ratliff, my former colleague, and I got together and kind of workshopped these options. And then Greta Lundgaard, who's incredible. So Elsie's incredible. Greta Lundgaard is a former German teacher and supervisor out of Texas. And she's awesome. So many amazing people in our field. And so she added and kind of wordsmithed this. And this became, what kind of feedback do you want? So this became a regular practice. So again, these are reusable, recyclable, all of the thing resources, right? So when we're thinking a writing assessment or a speaking assessment, how many times have we spent hours, like literal hours, writing out all this feedback, doing all this stuff? And what do students say a lot of times? They go, oh, hold on, let me get a sheet of paper for dramatic effect here. Hold on. Ready for this? Oh, okay, here we go. We give the students, it's an educational magazine. Don't worry, I've already read it. We give students back, right, quizzes, tests, essays, like story retells, rewrites, all the things. And we've like just gone crazy where we're like, okay, if you think, and then we've, what do you think about this? And I love your creativity here. And we're genuinely excited. And it's taken us forever. Plus, we've maybe marked up some grammar stuff, or like, ooh, don't forget you could use, but here, or however, up to you. I mean, all this customized feedback a lot of times, especially if it's grammatical and you're like, just want it to be just perfect. I think I understand what you're saying. What do students do like 80% of the time? 84. Thank you. I mean, maybe that's dramatic, but like they don't throw it away necessarily and crumple it up in front of you 80% of the time, but they always look for the grade, right? I mean, let's be realistic. They go, oh, okay, 93. I get a 93. What'd you get? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Me too. And maybe they shove it in the folder or crumple it up or whatever. I don't know about you, but I'm like, "Ah, come back." Like, I'm like, I have literally gone to the trash can and been like, absolutely not. And I have like handed it back to students just in like I took forever on that. I took forever on that. And how dare you? But it's because it wasn't the feedback they wanted. They didn't solicit the feedback. I am projecting completely the time and effort that I have taken onto them. And so I'm like, oh, you will appreciate this and you will read this. And they're like, okay, miss, whatever. They still don't read it, but they're like, dang, okay. Did I hurt your feelings? Yes. So learning not to take those things personally, because if that resonates, you're not alone. But also going, what kind of feedback do you want? Empowering them to solicit the feedback that they care about, and then not taking it personally when they don't care about the feedback that we forced upon them, right? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So you can mark up a paper all you want, but you can't make them care about it. Some will absolutely be like, that would have been me, right? Like pouring over every word, like, okay, okay, okay. And these mistakes, anything that my teacher, mistakes, right? Anything that my teacher would have corrected me on, I will never do that again. I was so motivated by her, our relationship, the class, the language, just my own self-efficacy, like all of it. I'm like, oh, got it. That one's a star, wrong verb. Okay. Never again will I make that mistake. But that's me. That's why I became a language teacher. I'm a word nerd. We're all word nerds. We're engaging in a professional conference in the summer being nerdy together, right? That's why we're here. That's not normal. We're all those people. But our students don't necessarily want the same feedback we would have wanted. So we can't make them care about something that they don't care about. So these feedback options are really great. We did it a couple of different ways. We have printed this off as a sheet of paper or just copy pasted them and put them on the writing paper or the speaking rubric itself. So there's a rubric, whatever your district or department has decided on. And we've attached it there and been like, boop, here you go. You're going to get the rubric. But if you don't want that, if you want more feedback, then let me know. And then we've also done where students get it back. And then if they want more feedback, they can go grab the feedback slip. Actually, they're kind of like in cubbies in my classroom. They look kind of like these in my house, but they can go get the feedback slip out of the cubby, attach it onto their writing or speaking rubric, and then turn it back in. So however it is that reminds you to give them that feedback, that's easy. Honestly, the second one as a time saver was my personal favorite, not putting it on the assessment itself, just putting the rubric, going through, assessing. And then I said, if you want more feedback, remember, you can give these options, and they would go get it, check the one that they wanted, staple it, and turn it back in. So then I could see the turn in box and go, oh, look, there's papers in there. They must want feedback. And so that was, for me, much easier. Not doing it for every single one, because many students forgot, and then you're like, oh, okay, whatever. And it's interesting. Some will pick the same kind all the time. I love when students ask what kind of, like where they can use a level up, where they can use an upgrade. Again, it's like you said, but don't forget we learned however, and however is a sexier way to say but. Also, like, am I understandable? Just am I comprehensible? Maybe I said subject pronoun infinitive, subject pronoun infinitive. There was no conjugating, there was no tenses. Did you know what I'm saying? Because it's level 1. If I said I to eat grapes, I like eat grapes, you know what I'm saying, right? Where did I shine? Where did I take risks? My student who couldn't remember gloves and said hand socks. Amazing. My other student who didn't remember, never learned the word box. Why would I teach the word box, right? It never came up, but said cereal's house. Well, cereal lives in a box in the US. It lives in a bag that lives in a box. So it was a great circumlocution. That's a really fun one. And then this one's really nice if you're short on time. The more students that say, no, thank you, can be a little bit nicer, but these are really, really fun. And they made me feel better about what kind of feedback I was giving. And I felt like they valued my time a little bit more because they asked for it in a way that wasn't awkward. It was just what we did. Every time we write or speak for a quiz or a test, you're going to get feedback options. I'm not doing it like on a daily level. I'm just doing it on, those big levels. And then let's see if you want to redo it or whatever, saving time, right? Speaking of grades, we were on a quarter system, semester system, but then also quarter system. So my students got a report card every 9 weeks, and that report card grade was on their transcript. It didn't average. So we really needed to be on top of things, both as teachers and them as students. So this flow chart was inspired by a teacher on Twitter, and I think I've got her tagged in the comments, but if I don't, I'll add it in the speaker notes because she really, amazing. I saw this and I was like, oh my gosh, a flow chart. Fantastic. So I just changed it for my own personal needs here. So as we go within the quarter, so let's say every 4.5 weeks or so, again, we're thinking regular recyclable things. So we're thinking we can use feedback options every unit or so, every chapter, whatever it is that you use for assessment, for reading and speaking. We've got these daily slides for different functions or different times of year, like the get to know you slide or video. And then we've got these quarter check-ins. So this would be something that I would edit, just have as a slide on its own slideshow so that I can print it, maybe a few to a page. And then I hand them out to students printed on paper. None of this really happens electronically unless it's literally something I'm projecting. Otherwise, boop, I just print it all. So the first thing they do is check their grade. Then if they're missing things, they make a list, decide if they need help, and then we go from there. And I can't tell you the last time I heard, like, what can I do about my grade? Because every couple of weeks we're like, hey, grade check-in, how are we doing? And my district or school also required that we give progress reports. We email and print them every Monday. So that was a pretty big hassle and a very helpful one, if I'm being totally honest. I love where I work. And it was like, oh, Monday progress reports. But when I tell you, that prevented so many frustrating conversations and just was a really good idea. I will say that was a game changer. So that, in addition to, again, every 4.5 weeks, like somewhere around those midpoints, third kind of points, saying like, hey, how's your grade? What are you missing? Those really supported my ability to say, I'm sorry, it's too late for such and such. Again, not in a gotcha way. I don't mean that because I firmly believe in late work, letting students do things for full credit, but there is not much more frustrating than feeling like people are wasting your time and that students don't value your time when you gave them 1,000 reminders and you're trying to help them be successful later on beyond us. And you're like, if you can just turn in your vocabulary, why can't just flashcards? It takes 10 minutes, whatever the thing is that may seem really simple and they're still not doing, can be so frustrating as a teacher because our work is very personal. People will say, don't take it personally. That's really hard because it's personal work. So we do it very personally, and therefore I think we take on a lot personally. So for me, those progress reports, oh, so annoying, such a help, so great. And also these grade check-ins to be like, hello, remember when I told you last week that you only had 3 more days to do blah, blah, blah? I'm sorry, it's been 2 months. I can no longer take that assignment from September. It's November. And I felt more backed up because I knew that I had been organized and that I had done this repeatedly. So really that's what a lot of resources come down to too, is making sure that your teaching is supportable and sustainable. And to me, those two are the same. If you can say, I'm sorry, Johnny, I can't take that. Or, hey, no problem. I'll give you full credit and I'll grade it as soon as I can, because they've either not done or have done what they were supposed to do. Families are in the loop. Everyone knows what's going on. Your administration knows what your policies are, and they know you're organized, you're informing students, things are getting graded, feedback's getting posted, all of things are getting done. That's sustainable teaching. That is supportable, sustainable teaching. And I have been very lucky to have a lot of that in my career, which I'm really grateful for. So it allowed me to sort of create some systems for myself that I knew would work and that I knew would help me teach. And this is just one of them. So again, feel free to edit, but this can be a great start if you need some kind of flow chart, some kind of visual for students to take a little bit more responsibility for the part that they play in keeping track of all this. Because in the words of Tanya Dalton, not getting overwhelmed isn't always having too much to do. Sometimes it's just not knowing where to start. And Tanya Dalton writes one of my favorite books called The Joy of Missing Out. So not the fear of missing out, but the joy of missing out. And that's what she says. Sometimes getting overwhelmed isn't having too much to do. It's not knowing where to start. That's our students. If they had really important years like 6th grade, 3rd grade, 8th grade online, their stamina is totally different. They are totally different students, a lot of them coming out of the pandemic and going forward. So anything we can do to help them kind of ground themselves and figure out where to start, I think has always been valuable, but it's especially valuable right now, especially for adults too. It reminds me when they say, my grade, help, I'm failing. I'm like, hold on, did you get a flow chart? Did you do a thing? Let me find that. Let's find what role I play, and let's find what role you play. And that can be very empowering for students, because now it's not all on either person, it's a partnership, right? When you get to the slide that says pencil grab here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit out here. And on slides, this is a delightful addition. You probably already know this, but on slides down here, you have a couple of options. This is the film strip because it looks like a film strip. And then to the left, you have these 4 little squares, like a little grid. That's grid view. Grid view is the long-standing secret of slides. It's the best view. So I like the film strip view, and that's usually what you see when you think of a slideshow. But if you think of it as a collection of resources and just a plan, if you lesson plan with your student-facing slides, right? And maybe you have your whole unit in one slideshow, or a whole day's lesson, or a whole week's lesson in one slideshow. Grid view can be very powerful. So what I'm going to do is at the bottom left here, I'm going to click on grid view, and from excuse me, from pencil grab on, you're going to see all of these, and they're taking a second because there's a lot of them. Oh, look at that. OMG. It's just perfectly in a row of 5 there. Look at that. Usually it's like, boop, right here. But right here, starting with 21, what a great view. Look at us. From 21 and on are those student-facing reusable slides. So with lots of different activities, again, comprehensible input, grammar in context, backward design, also just trying to keep class not boring and, keep the energy up, keep the momentum up, especially if your students have phones available to them, because that can be it's a whole thing, right? And that can be a whole battle where you're like, this needs to be more exciting than what's on your phone. And that can be really hard to do. So these are all student-facing activities. They have the student instructions exactly as I would show students. And so you can tell what you do for each activity. Obviously, contact me if you have any questions or you want any examples. But these are kind of what I've worked on over the years. You've got some Martina Beck's activities. If you're not familiar with her work, she makes resources in French and in Spanish, primarily Spanish. Fantastic. Incredible resources. And a lot of them come from different people who have shared online. Keith Toda is an incredible Latin teacher in my district in Gwinnett County Public Schools. He's amazing. And he has inspired many of these too. So these are not like Meredith creations. These are like learned over the years creations, and credited where credit is due. I've tried really hard. So these might be, again, like a one activity, translation volleyball, super fun. Memoria, seis, just change the word for six in your language. Reverse, hand or hands, lie, Gimkit, Blookit, those are both online resources. That's not like a, they look like weird words, but they're not like another language or anything. You've got Formative, if you use formative.com, one of my personal favorites. Run in Circles, Card Tower, Jenga, Hot Potato, Interrupt, Limit, Hear It, Draw It, Read It, Draw It, The Unfair Game, love. Scratch Out, Shape Reading, Are You Honest, Lost in Translation, Memory 2, and then One Word at a Time, Pass and Tell. Again, these are inspired by all sorts of different people, but these are daily activities. Excuse me, I have the hiccups all of a sudden, of course. These are all activities that I would use like every unit. So let's zoom out and say, I've got 3 weeks a unit, which is about what I would spend. That's 15 instructional days, thinking 3 weeks, Monday through Friday, times 3, right? 15 instructional days. I'm going to take out 1 each week for like quiz, makeup work, and like, or a test. So I'm going to say -1, -1, -1. So really it's 4, 8, 12 instructional days. And I've got here from slides 52 to 21, right? So that's 31 activities. And I've got 4, 8, 12 instructional days. I can do almost 3 of these activities, each different instructional day, and my unit's planned out. As long as I have like the Jenga blocks, like if there's a thing that's needed for it, I've got the note cards to do Card Tower. I've got the questions for Las Vegas. I've got the papers for Scratch Out, whatever. I've now got 31 activities that I could use each unit, and now my students know how to do it. They know what they're doing. It looks familiar, but I just changed the content. So I'm not looking at the calendar going, oh, we start unit 4 tomorrow. What am I going to do? I don't even have any copies ready. I don't have this. I don't have that. I can really, again, design with the end in mind, backwards design, but also save myself the pressure of needing to be new and exciting and flashy all the time. Even if I have 10 units, that still means they've only played across the year, August to May, they've only played the same activity like 10 times maybe. If I have, let's say, 6 units in a semester, still only 6 times. My students, we would have a semester and then they change levels of the semester. So I only had 4 months with them. I am going to repeat the heck out of some activities for 4 months, right? So these are all different activities that you can do. And if further explanations or documents are needed, they're in the speaker notes. So really fun. And then you've got some templates here, for example, like weekend chat, which hopefully I have linked here. I think I have. Oof, I'll have to add that. But you've got some really cool chat mats from like Bethany Drew and Amy Leonard and incredible teachers who make and share these beautiful resources. So if you haven't found those, there's Bethany Drew's name. And then Amy Leonard, I'm going to credit here in the speaker notes. I'm actually just type it so you can see it. Amy Leonard, Bethany Drew. You can Google both of them, and they both have resources on Teachers Pay Teachers, but a lot of the resources are free. So if you want to do like a weekend chat or something where, every Monday you talk about what you did over the weekend, there's this great placemat for that. And now students have scaffolded responses they can use. If you flip it over, maybe you have the Friday side. So Friday says, what are you going to do this weekend? Now you've scaffolded the future for them and they can Q&A in that. Routines, thinking every Wednesday we do this, every Friday we do this. Oh, it's the beginning of the unit. Remember, we always play whatever, pencil grab or that kind of thing. I think about growing up, and some of my favorite aspects that I remember from school or home or sports or whatever were some of those routines and those like, oh, Friday night, my dad was always coaching and teaching. but we'd always get pizza, and we never got pizza. We never ate out in restaurants when I was a kid, because I grew up in a very small town without really many restaurants. But we would get takeout pizza. So like Friday nights, it was like, yes, I know we're going to be at the school, at the gymnasium, while my dad's coaching, but we're gonna get pizza. So, it kind of took the sting off of being at school all day as a kid. So things like that, where that like, okay, Monday, we're going to say, where'd you go this weekend? What'd you do? And Friday, we're going to say, where are you going this weekend? What are you going to do? What do you want to do? Tons of different versions. Up here with the under Bethany Drew, whoops, my mouse again. Here we go. Under Bethany Drew's name, you can see I've put her blog, so you can go directly there. She is aventurasnuevas.wordpress.com. So really, really awesome. And if you look in Teachers Pay Teachers, Amy Leonard's store is called Anchors and Aids. And I'm going to put that in there. Look at you seeing me add this live. Whoops, it helps if I spell it right. There we go. Anchors and Aids. And she's got really, really great resources. Like I said, not advocating for anything paid. It's just they're wonderful teachers that just share a lot of resources. So a lot of this stuff is free. That's my testimonial. This is an unpaid advertisement. So a lot of routines, a lot of great things you can do here. And then what you have is some documents that go with all of these activities. So you have all these slides, all these activities, but what are they doing while we do some of these? So one of those slides said, dictation. Another one said your warm up, and all of those kind of things. But what does that look like? What are students doing? I love technology. I am now a instructional technology coach. So clearly I do, but I don't want everything we do to revolve around technology. So I do love documents nonetheless. What you have here on this slide is some of my favorite documents. And you've got student instructions at the top too, so you can see exactly what they would do. So like this warm-up paper, for example, let me put on my laser here. This warm-up paper, you could do, hold on, there we go. Here's those options. So 6 options, and they're, darn mouse again. They've got 6 options here, but they're writing 4. This is what I was referring to earlier when I said they write what option number they chose, and then they put their answer. So this is a paper that you can check every week or every other week, or don't check it at all. And it's formative, but you walk by and you check that they're doing it as you're taking attendance, right? Walking by, writing something down, students are like, oh, here she comes. They always sit up a little bit straighter, which I think is funny because I'm usually just like checking email or something that doesn't matter. But looking like you're checking, or actually checking is a good idea. So here's like 5 days of warm-ups with a spot to put comments, questions, observations, note some extra vocabulary, anything they want, really. It's their paper, right? You've also got an interpretive guide that, here, I'm going to open up. So when you click on the word link, here's what I'm going to do. So you'll see me do it. When you click on the word link here, it's the same bit.ly as before, except, hold on, except this link has the word unit in between it. So before it was just bit.ly/Meredith templates, big M, big T. All you need to add is the word unit, and you're going to get a direct link to these documents. Again, these are all free. These are all take, edit, do whatever you need to do. But these are those bigger printable versions of these. So they're going to open in Google Slides. You didn't do it wrong. I use slides for documents. That's another session. Documents in slides is like my favorite thing, because you can give yourself instructions, notes over here off to the side, and you can make it paper size. It's easy. Anyway, and then from here, you just file, print, and go from there. So this is that warm-up sheet. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger here. So here's where they pick 4 options of the 6. So this is an everyday resource. They're picking 4 options here, telling you what number and then answering it. They've got spaces for questions, extra words, this week's objective, checking in, and also just noting that there's some other stuff they can be doing. Great resource, really, really nice on a daily level. Anne Marie Chase, who's a phenomenal teacher out in Nevada, made an interpretive guide, and all I did was tweak it, but I've got her cited in her original blog post in the speaker notes. But if you've got a really great, authentic resource and you just literally want to see what students understand from the word level down to the main idea level, and also how confident they are, this can be a really great resource. So we use the warm-up sheet. We would use this every single day, 1 per week, because it's got 5 days. And then these, maybe 1 per week. In a 3-week unit, it's 2 or 3 times. This would be something blank that I could just keep on hand. So if I found a great video or infographic or something like that, poof, I didn't have to create questions for it, and I could use it right away without saying, gosh, that looks great, but I don't know if I could use it. And now I can read over these, collect them because they're printed on paper, collect them, and then read over them and see what my students understand, don't understand, feel confident about, don't feel confident about, etc. Really, really great. Again, in the speaker notes is Anne Marie Chase's original blog post. All I did was just tweak her file. Fabulous. Kind of the way that grammar has become a naughty word, we sort of made dictation a bad word, but I love dictations because for me and my students, I'm able to see them really improve their speed of comprehension and their processing time, especially for a lot of my students with IEPs or just different needs in general. I could see what they needed to think about a little bit longer, what repetition they needed, what they could spell immediately and just write out, obviously in full ideas. So these are 10 full sentences that I can say that has to do with the unit. On the D line, they write exactly what they hear in the language. And then we do that, we do all 10. So I might say, La chica va a la escuela los lunes, whatever. Después de la escuela, and so I do 10 sentences like that that have something to do with our unit. Then we go back, I show them what the sentences look like written out. They put their corrections on the C line. And then on the T line, we follow it up and they translate them. I want to see exactly how they're writing what they hear, and then also how they're making sense of what they hear and what they wrote, and then what they read, because I tricked them into reading with that correction line, right? So this is actually 3 activities in one, and it goes from a listening to a writing to a reading to then a translation. Again, some people make dictation and translation naughty words, but I'm kind of an all in moderation kind of person. So in a big department with a lot of classes, I got to hit students kind of wherever they are. And for a lot of my students, these were helpful. And again, I could see their speed and their confidence increase because there was no pressure. You're doing fine. It's not a spelling test, right? And then it's a really helpful resource later because I would use one of these a week. So let's say every Wednesday we would do a dictation. If I know that I have 3 weeks a unit and we've done Wednesday, 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 we now have 3 dictations, 10 sentences, 10 sentences, 10 sentences. That's 30 sentences that I can write and model throughout the unit, increasing in difficulty, that by the end of the unit, model maybe what they're going to hear on the unit test, what they can write on the unit test, what I'm going to ask them on the unit test. If I know backward design, what those assessments are going to look like, I can start to build them some really great examples to model their own writing and speaking, to do their own reading comprehension and self-check as we go, formatively without pressure. I mean, all of the above. It just means I have to have my you-know-what together in advance, just a little bit, to be able to get them to the end destination. That's really hard starting out. If you're new to teaching and you're like, oh my gosh, or you're like a German, Arabic, French, Chinese, Korean teacher who's not French or Spanish, and you're like, lady, I'm 20 years in and I still don't know what we're doing next week because you have a whole bunch of classes to prepare for. This can be super helpful because you can come up with these 10 sentences, just bing, bang, boom. Honestly, when I feel pressured and when I get nervous or feel like creatively not, whatever, inspired, I just literally go to the unit assessment and then I model some off that to make sure I'm still on track. So as long as I have those tests and quizzes made, I can do just about anything with these. And they don't have to be real exciting, but they have to get students where they want to go. So you can add some extra level up language. You can add some transitions, and maybe that's how you teach the transitions. And that's then also how you teach the alphabet, is by getting students to hear it more, write it more, and figure out what it is they're hearing and writing. I love dictations, if you can't tell. The next document you've got in here is inspired by Sarah Lovelace, fantastic teacher out of Kentucky. And she had some guiding questions And instead of students just getting up and talking to whoever, on the left-hand side here, they end up by the end of the unit having everyone in class, or however many fit, names on the paper. So let's say you've got Stephen, Susie, Jabron, Adrian, Meredith, Shannon, like you've got all of these different people. You've asked all of them these 5 questions, which are what I have decided you need to know by the end of the unit. So if it's like level 1, unit 1, where are you from? What's your birthday? How are you? Where do you live? How old are you? That's 5 right there that guide the unit, right? Because it's all small talk introductions. So if I know by the end of the unit, you've asked all of these 30 classmates or whatever, these 5 questions, by the end down here, that's 150 times that you have asked and answered. Like, there is no reason for students not to know 5 questions from the unit. So not only is it very accessible, but it also gives them a chance to talk to everyone and to get to know their classmates. So it's going to tie into that environment piece as well. This works for multiple content areas, but it's just great for us, and especially with an example answer here. So the questions are here. They have very little space to write their answers, so they have to be not brief, but they have to figure out kind of what they can fit in there. This also works great for a pop quiz, for like a writing quiz. After let's say we do it Tuesdays and Thursdays. That was always my routine. Tuesdays and Thursdays, we do the classmate roster. You have 10 minutes to talk to 5 people. Done, right? So if we've done that twice, you've had 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes to talk to 5 plus 5, 10 people. I know that on Friday I can say, pop writing quiz. Take out a sheet of paper. Tell me, tell me about yourself. So answer those same questions about you, and tell me about 3 classmates. Now, it means not only do you have to understand what the heck you asked, because they can use this paper. So all you can use is this paper and then your sheet of paper to write on. It means you have to know what the heck you asked and answered. And you had to talk to 10 classmates. I'm only asking you to tell me about 3. So the students who don't maybe have 3 to even write about, what were you doing when we were all talking to 10 different classmates? It's a conversation starter, right? Again, that kind, gentle accountability responsibility, where it's like, what are we doing here? And kind of catching things before they become a thing. I noticed you couldn't really write about more classmates. Then I saw your conversation roster and you only have 1 person, and also it's not your handwriting, it's his handwriting, which means you just switched papers with him. You wrote on his, he wrote on yours, and you had no idea what you were responding to. So that's a conversation starter. And I'm not saying that example to be grumpy. I'm saying that as a very real classroom example of something that will happen, because our students are students, right? Come on. They want to cut corners. I get it. But we have to know why we're doing the things that we're doing with them. And this is one of my favorites. If you can get more than 5 questions, it's great. I've given mine a list of 15 before. Ask them any of them, and you just reformat it a little bit. But if you can get some questions that drive the unit, and at the end of the unit, you're going to ask as a speaking, as a writing, or they make good prompts for both of those, then go for it. If they can answer, where are you from? How old are you? Where do you live? When's your birthday? How are you? Then you can say, tell me a little bit about yourself. And they just give you the answers to those questions, right? Teaching students how to take interrogative pieces of information, questions, and turn them into responses, right? Super, super important, especially as they move up through the levels. And then the next document you have is, again, Bethany Drew, fantastic, amazing teacher and dear friend out of North Carolina. And she was, she got the template also from another teacher, again, both credited at the bottom there. All the instructions are here, but basically now it takes the can-do statements that you have from your unit. Maybe it's, I can express this, I can use this, I can answer this. And they now do it for classmates and you, they initial, and now it's like a response sheet. It's not interpersonal. It's not people talking to people. It's presentational, and other students are checking off that that student could, in fact, complete the task. So this is really fun to let them get 2 columns full, and then you just pick a random one. Number 3, number 6, number 8, and watch them either really have it ready or like, oh shoot, what was that one? And, kind of, again, be accountable in a low stakes, good relationship, healthy way that isn't like, well, I see you didn't talk to 10 people. It's a conversation starter, right? A lot of these things are conversation starters about what are we doing, right? Why don't you have these responses ready? You have 2 columns of signatures, and yet there's a couple of these you can't do. So let's talk about what's going on. Why didn't you make some notes to yourself? Or why didn't you kind of prepare these tasks a little bit more? Bethany has used it in the past for a grade. So that's up here too. Feel free to delete that. Siri, for some reason, on my watch is talking to me. She inserts herself sometimes. So Bethany uses it for a grade. Sometimes that's up here. Feel free to use that or not. I usually delete it off mine, but I like it up there because you got to do what you got to do. John Bracey, who's an amazing Latin teacher out of Massachusetts, always says, rule 1 is don't get fired. That's it, right? Rule 1 is don't get fired. So if you have to take a grade for this and a grade for that, or a certain amount of grades every week, do what you got to do. Rule 1, do not get fired. So if you need to take a grade for this, do it. It's in 4 parts. Just do it 25, 50, 75, 100. It's really hard not to get the exceeding. And then if they get the meeting or the progressing or the limited progress, they've got the opportunity to redo. These are can-do tasks. They're not, set in stone like you couldn't do it today. Just like we do with fitness goals. If you can't run an 8-minute mile today, right now your mile's at 10 minutes, and then 6 months from now, you get it down to 8 minutes or 7 minutes. No one says, average it with that higher one. No, you did what you needed to do. So in terms of mastery over time, these really open themselves up to redos and retries and all the things. So that can be really handy if you have to take grades for the things or track. We're all tracking progress, but you know what I'm saying. Rule 1, don't get fired. So do what you need to do. And then give kids lots of chances and then go from there. That's all we can do. The last piece is inspired by Martina Bex, or sort of created by Martina Bex. And all I did was just kind of reformat it in a way that for me was a little bit easier to print and kind of easier to add into things, because I wanted to have everything, all the documents that I like for every unit in one place. So this would be something we would also do a couple of days a week, usually a Monday, Wednesday. So we do a couple of tasks on here 2 days a week, few people here 2 days a week, one of these once a week, one of these once a week. Here's that recyclable, right? I can print some of these out blank. This one I'm going to have to do some writing on, and this one I'm going to do some writing on, but not much, right? This one I can do blank, this one I can do blank, and this one I can do blank, except for maybe the objective at the bottom, but they can write that in too. That's why it's a line. So this is every day, weekly, 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 and then per unit, or maybe once a week too. We used to do Free Write Friday because I like alliterations. So I like that double F, right? Free Write Friday. And students would write, and it was great to give them a goal. Your goal is to write, and I've got the goal right up here, a la Martina. Like I said, she totally inspired this, so this is not original. But when you give them a goal, you say, okay, your goal is 50 words. That's right here. That's like 7 lines. And students go, 50 words? And then they see where 50 words ends, and they're like, oh, never mind, it's only 50 words. It's not intimidating anymore, right? Then maybe next time you say, okay, your goal this time is 75 words. Well, that's right here. It's fantastic. They've gone up 50% and they're still halfway down the page. So it's still narrative, right? It's still like, hola, period. Me llamo Meredith, period. Soy de Illinois, period. Yo vivo in Georgia, period. So punctuation between the lines and then 1 word per line. Man, when I tell you, students would be like 10 words short and they're like, okay, I'm almost there. You said 100. I'm right at 90. I'm like, did you ask the reader a question? And the look on their face is like, oh, no. Amazing. So it gets them to level up, right? We want to be facilitating comprehensible, engaging, exciting target language. And what do people who are really good conversationalists do? They ask questions, right? They inquire, they add details. So that's also something. You've never seen so many subject pronouns as you have until you've used one of these sheets and told students, just add the subject pronoun. Like, don't forget to say who. It's like, we have blah, 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 because you don't need them in Spanish. And as a Spanish teacher, either way. You've never seen so many exact, precise subject pronouns because it gets them another word. So they're like, yo, tango, whereas they could have just said tango, but now they're going to do yo. So it's kind of fun that way. It becomes kind of a competition. Now they're focusing on the goal and not freaking out about what language to use or what words they don't know. They're thinking about what and how much they want to say and less about how to say it and how to make it perfect and all of that kind of anxious kind of stuff. You've got a couple of behaviors here too, or excuse me, a couple of behaviors. I'm thinking to anxious behaviors. You've got a couple of options here too. So it goes all the way to like 280. And then I have just like an unnumbered page and another unnumbered page. So feel free to add numbers to these, but it was just like if you wanted like page 3 of blank. So this one's like page 2. And then you've got page 3 is unnumbered. If I can get it to show, there you go. And then page 4 is unnumbered as well. So any of those. And then if you want like reminders, there's a blank line at the bottom. If you just, wanted to add some tips, I love to add tips like, hey, don't forget, you can always use transitions. Don't forget to ask me a question, all of that good stuff, which is great because students don't remember. There's a lot of pressure like, okay, write everything you know. Well, that's a lot, right? They can't always write everything they know. That's a big ask. So there's a lot of good stuff there. And these would be, again, things that I would print out or prepare at the beginning of a unit. That's why they're the unit template copies. So I would have those ready. These are things that I would do every unit. And then the slides that would go with these, many of which are here. So like if it's, content, if it's, let me think if I have one here that has, let me think if I'm just going to do this right here. So if I do, okay. So like, for example, 27 and 28, let's look at 28, al revés, like to the reverse, right? Reverse, reverse. Oh, it's called it like cha-cha slide, like uno, reverse, reverse. So let's say we just did a dictation. Now you can take al revés, you can read your dictation sentences on whatever page, like sheet of paper that was. That's literally all that means. Now take the questions and write questions as if those sentences are the answers. So if I said the girl goes to school, that was one of our dictation sentences, maybe for a school unit, like a story or a novel or something we're reading. What's the question? Could be, where does the girl go? Who goes to school? Does the girl go home or to school? Students can write a whole bunch of different kinds of questions. And then now they can turn it and quiz someone else and then keep track of their answers. That's a really fun formative assessment activity. So once you've done a dictation, now you have those. What you have on slide 57 there after those documents is how it all fits together. So let me get my captions back on here. And I had mentioned before that we did typically traditionally 3 weeks a unit. So like 4 days, like Monday through Thursday and then Friday, Monday through Thursday and then Friday, Monday through Thursday, Friday. And these were all like, I had to have a certain amount of classwork assignments. I had to have 2 quizzes and 1 test every unit. So just like a very predictable kind of schedule. It was great. When you look at this, think of it like a calendar, Monday through Friday. It's just not labeled that way, but 15 instructional days. The bolded parts are what you just saw: documents, activities, all of the above all together. So when we counted out those activities, like 31 slides or whatever it was across 3 weeks, these are those 31 activities pretty much. In addition to, maybe we do some workbook pages. Maybe we do something collaborative with other classes. Maybe we do a project. Maybe we do whatever it is. Again, don't get fired. Do what you got to do. But within your context, these are where these would fit in. And then the next unit, I would do the same things around the same time. So like, we don't play pencil grab at the end of a unit because it doesn't make sense. It's for vocabulary. We're not looking at vocabulary at the end of a unit. It's already in context, right? Same thing with like Las Vegas. They're kind of like difficult questions for Las Vegas. And that slide says Las Vegas. So students have to sort of gamble on how confident they feel about the question before they even see the question. It's great. A lot of yelling. That wouldn't be appropriate at the beginning of the unit. They don't know the content yet, right? They haven't had the input and I haven't been able to deliver instruction. So I would do these about the same time every unit. This is my unit lesson plan. I just change the content. So if I have to turn something in, here are my lesson plans, right? It's pretty much the same. And then for me, it really helped things when I made these quizzes, the same kinds of quizzes at the same time. So for level 1 and 2, my first quiz was always reading. My second quiz was always listening. And then our tests had pretty much reading, writing, speaking, listening. Sometimes either speaking or writing, but usually all four. And that was a really nice way to keep practicing, keep doing all of them all the time, of course, but only assess on the ones that were appropriate and made the most sense at the time. So reading first, then listening, and then all four, and usually in context. If you want the examples of any of these, I have all of my Spanish 1 in one folder. You can see all the quizzes, all the tests, all the daily slides. So you can see what this kind of looks like in context. It varies from this a little bit. This is just one example. This is just like a sample unit pacing, but this is the goal, is like not to sit down and plan out a unit and do all this different stuff every time, especially if it's your first time on a level. Use the same stuff you just did, just do it in a different way. I found, as I said before, that my students weren't like, what are we doing? How do you play this? Nearly, I mean, they like hardly ever anymore, because I had things explained, ready, and they weren't new. They weren't old and boring yet because we hadn't done them that much. They also weren't new and like totally confusing or mysterious. So it was really, really nice. So you have all of that you can take and, like I said, model and do whatever you need to do. I'm going to come back just to double check that you did get this link. So if you go, wait for it. Ooh, we're going to go very fast here. Wait for it. Da, da, da. I'm going to go all the way. There it is. So this link, bit.ly/Meredith templates, big M, big T, and the one in the meantime that had, or in the between that had the word unit in it as well. Super, super handy if you want any of those editable and those documents as well. File, make a copy, go crazy. They'll copy right over to your Google Drive and you'll have editable versions, which hopefully will be great and you will really enjoy. Thank you so much. I hope this was not too much information. I hope everything is usable and I hope that it makes sense, right? We want documents. We want forward-facing student slides so that it's ready to just like plug and play. I can see what it looks like for them in the classroom, but also what they're working on. And that they're recyclable, reusable things for just proficiency-based, realistic, real-world, sustainable teaching in the classrooms of today, right? 2023, 2024. It is super, super hard to be a world language teacher just in general. And it is hard to be a teacher right now. And so I hope this takes some of the load off and the stress off and just makes your life a little bit easier. If you tweak things and make them better or have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I am very easy to find. And my contact information is in the speaker notes of those first slides. So please don't hesitate. And I would love your feedback as well. So I thank you for all you do. Colette thanks you. And if you scan this QR code or the link below, then you can go right to, you can just type it in. It's another bit.ly, big capital B, capital S, and then 2023. That will take you right to the session feedback form. And that would be very, very helpful. And I thank you so much. I wish you a great school year and just a really hopefully productive end of summer, still with some time to relax and nothing but just good things and sustainable teaching for however long you are in the profession. If you're getting ready to the end, congratulations. If you're new, welcome. We are excited you're here. If you're mid-career as I am, again, hopefully you find these things sustainable and exciting, and you have some things you can share back or some feedback. So I thank you and I wish you the best.